Hey guys, here's my Borderland essay number 2. Here we go. Language is a way of identifying and being heard amongst the people of the world. Being able to tell your story as a woman and allowing others to connect and feel comfortable is infectious, and others will start to follow. It's a revolution. Women are strong and independent while being viewed totally different in these stories. Women were dismissed and degraded for their gender. To be female was dangerous and unsafe. Times have changed, and today's strong, empowering women are the future for not only females but for men as well. It's a path to equality and stability, amalgamating humans so we can eliminate hatred and discrimination. We're now able to see each other on the same level, and not you or I are better. Kingston and Anzaldúa both faced strong men who were empowered. They were able to convey this in their stories and how they struggled with their culture, as well as the way women were betrayed. Anzaldúa uses poems to spread her struggles and experiences, while Kingston uses storytelling. Both are a form of language and a way to communicate their stories to different cultures. These women confronted the world about race, sexuality, and patriarchy, and were not apprehensive of what others thought. Both women from different cultures felt alienated and feared the men of their own culture. They had to listen to the man and his demands without any sort of opinion. Man was power, and that was that. Anzaldúa uses poems and personal stories throughout her book to radiate her feelings and what she was going through with her own culture, while Kingston spreads her words through storytelling and the stories she was told as a child. In both cultures, women had their thinking done for them by men. They weren't allowed to have their own opinions or independence. They were brainwashed into thinking what the men wanted them to think. They had no room for growth or knowledge. This was how the men wanted it to be, and that's how it was. Anzaldúa states, culture forms beliefs. We perceive the version of reality that it communicates. Dominant paradigms, predefined concepts that exist as unquestionable, unchallengeable, are transmitted to us through culture. Culture is made by those in power, men. Anzaldúa talks about how women are meant to be obsequious and are considered selfish if she revolts. Men make the laws, women abide them. Kingston, early on, tells us a childhood story about her aunt and how even the women of the village turned their backs because she was so wrong for her doings. Kingston's father insinuates that no one speaks of the aunt ever again. She was an embarrassment to the family, and because the men decided who and what women could be, she was disowned. Women of color had no choice. Kingston states, women in the old China did not choose. Some man had commanded her to lie with him and be his secret. In both cultures, women were taught to surrender to their own feelings and obey the men of their culture. Bravery is an understatement for what these women dealt with on a daily basis. These women are the epitome of unbreakable, and nothing was or is going to stop these females from telling their stories. They wanted to be heard and seen for something other than their sexuality and race. There was so much more to women than what men convinced or allowed them to be. Breaking away from oppression, not allowing themselves to be controlled by their culture, and following their own dreams. By not being held down by the constrictions of their own culture, women were able to build their own identity. They can find themselves in who they are, not who the men want them to be. There's a chance for them to gain knowledge and build confidence they weren't allowed to express. Gloria Anzaldúa reveals, quote, here in the solitude prospers its rebellion, in solitude she thrives. Once you separate yourself from your culture, a woman starts to find her own self. Anzaldúa removes herself from her home and origins to find her own personality without any restrictions. Still being a part of their culture, just detaching herself from toxicity. While Kingston's mom was able to find herself and become something that she desired to be. She was able to see the world and what it was like without having to serve others. Kingston's mother was afraid of nothing and was able to view the world without her culture and family belittling her aspirations. There is no pain you can inflict that I cannot endure. Both women transmitted power, and the only person who would stand in their way was them. Anzaldúa made the choice to go against her culture and be homosexual. She wanted to rebel against power and be independent. She also wanted to feel control over her life, as well as Brave Orchid. They both portrayed this in their stories. Oppression no longer existed to these women, and they were going to become something more than what their culture wanted. quote, not me sold out my people, but they me. In both books, you experience women that even though their culture and home betray them, they would never sell out where they come from. Their culture would always be a part of them. These women never disowned the culture that degraded them, but they would defend their culture if another was to attack it. They use parts of their stories to allow others to enter their world and what they went through, and in return for us not to be judgmental. Even though it's hard for us to respect their culture, even though it's hard for us to respect our culture, you will respect it. Anzaldúa and Kingston both defend and attack their culture with their words so one can feel how confusing and imbalanced life was for them. They had no guidance or consistency, and they were able to show us this through their writing. Quote, the ability to respond is what is meant by responsibility, yet our cultures take away our ability to act. Through Anzaldúa's poems and stories and Kingston's storytelling, you are able to feel their emotions much more deeply and vividly. You are allowed into their thoughts and what these women face daily. Even though it's two totally different cultures, as a reader, you experience how the women feel dejected and unwanted through their storytelling and poems. These women emitted loneliness and had no one to turn to about what or how they felt. Instead, they were able to use their words Both Kingston and Anzaldúa were able to defend themselves by writing their thoughts and experiences on paper. The world became aware and focused. They used their words as weapons to break down their culture piece by piece, to show the men of their culture, you are not going to treat us like scum. Kingston reveals, quote, there is an outward tendency in females. We are more than what you make us out to be, and as a woman, we will make sure to fight and become in control of our own lives. Anzaldúa's Borderlands and Kingston's The Woman Warrior tells their story of how patriarchy and culture could have defined them as women, but they learned to be competent and have control over their own story and life. These women were able to accomplish the world just through their words and allowed us to see how intrusive and ugly it was for them. These women fought for themselves and in the end came out on top. They found a way to emerge their culture and still equally portray their homeland. They used poetry and storytelling as a way of communicating their life to the world and allowed others to connect through different types of language.